Imagine yourself lying comfortably, the weight of the day beginning to fade. Your breathing is soft and steady, your eyelids heavy as the room around you quiets into stillness. Tonight, we will drift together into a story, one that carries both the comfort of gentle rhythm and the curiosity of hidden truths. As you listen, you are invited to let go, to release any need to solve or analyze. Instead, allow yourself to float, as though on a slow-moving river of words, where the current is calm but carries you toward mysterious places. The story you are about to hear begins with a name, whispered for decades in both hushed conversations and bold headlines: Operation Majestic 12. To some, it is nothing more than a clever fabrication, a bundle of forgeries created to amuse or deceive. To others, it is the ultimate key to unlocking one of humanity's greatest secrets, that we are not alone, and that governments have known this far longer than they admit. Between these two poles, hoax and truth, lies a twilight zone of intrigue, where rumor, history, and imagination overlap. For those who first encountered the phrase Majestic 12, it sounded almost cinematic, almost too dramatic to be real. The very number, 12, implies a council, a hidden circle of chosen individuals, meeting in secret rooms under fluorescent lights, poring over reports and photographs that the rest of the world could never see. These images stir the imagination, and yet, there is a strange quietness to them. We do not picture chaos or noise, we picture silence. Men in dark suits, papers slid across polished tables, a clock ticking faintly in the background as history unfolds in secrecy. Tonight, we are not here to prove or disprove, nor to argue over authenticity. Instead, we are here to explore, to travel calmly through the world in which Majestic 12 exists, both as a story and as a possibility. In this journey, you will hear of government files, of witnesses and skeptics, of culture and myth, of secrecy and revelation. But you will hear it at a pace that invites rest. No sharp turns, no sudden jolts, just a gentle unfolding, like pages turned slowly under candlelight. The idea of secret committees is not foreign to history. From the earliest days of empires, kings and rulers gathered councils of the trusted few. In times of war, hidden groups were convened to study enemy codes, to interpret intelligence, to plan in silence what could not be spoken in public. When you hear the name Majestic 12, perhaps you can imagine it as another branch of this long human tradition. A select group, convened after the shock of the 1940s, when new weapons had split the atom and mysterious lights were seen in the skies. A moment in history when the world felt fragile and secrecy seemed necessary. And yet, as we speak of it now, there is no urgency, only reflection. You are safe here, listening. The events of the past are like distant stars, bright enough to be seen, yet too far to harm. All that remains is the glow of mystery, softly illuminating the corners of imagination. So as you rest, let your mind drift. Imagine a dimly lit office in Washington, D.C., in the years after the Second World War. Outside, the streets are quiet, the hum of street lamps a steady rhythm. Inside, a file is placed on a desk. The label reads, Top Secret. Within it, if the stories are to be believed, are photographs of wreckage, strange reports of beings not from Earth, and a directive signed by presidents and generals. Whether those files truly existed, no one can say for certain. But the image itself, of the file, the desk, the quiet room, has lived on in countless minds. In the decades that followed, the words Majestic 12 would resurface again and again, like an echo refusing to fade. Researchers would search for documents, critics would dismiss them, and believers would cling to the possibility that they had glimpsed the veil of secrecy being pulled back, if only for a moment. Tonight, you too will hear this story, not as a headline, not as a debate, but as a calm, unfolding tapestry. Operation Majestic 12 is not only a tale of UFOs and government secrets, it is also a story about us, our fascination with what lies beyond, our deep suspicion of authority, and our yearning to feel part of something larger than ourselves. Whether you see it as fact or fiction, hoax or history, the myth of Majestic 12 carries the same weight. It invites us to wonder. And in that wonder, there is peace. So as you close your eyes and listen, imagine this as a gentle descent, a descent not into chaos, but into mystery. The kind of mystery that does not demand quick answers, but instead opens space for dreaming. Let each word settle softly, like falling leaves, until you are ready to drift fully into the story of one of the most curious files in American history. And with that, the journey begins. The year is 1947. The war has ended, yet the world is not at peace. Cities across Europe still lie in ruins, and nations are rebuilding from ashes. In America, soldiers have returned home, families are reuniting, and a new optimism lingers in the air. Yet beneath this sense of recovery lies something heavier, an awareness that the world has changed forever. The splitting of the atom in Hiroshima and Nagasaki showed humankind both its power and its fragility, and in this atmosphere of both triumph and fear, whispers of new mysteries began to emerge. The late 1940s were a time of secrets. Governments everywhere were creating hidden committees, black budget projects, and intelligence operations designed to keep ahead of rivals. The Cold War was beginning, and with it came an age where information was as valuable as weapons. The United States and the Soviet Union stared at one another through a haze of suspicion. Behind locked doors, leaders wondered who would strike first, and with what unimaginable technology. It was in this climate that strange things appeared in the sky. In the summer of 1947, a man named Kenneth Arnold reported seeing 9 shining objects skipping across the air near Mount Rainier in Washington state. His description, like saucers skipping on water, gave birth to the term flying saucer. Newspapers carried the story with fascination, and suddenly the skies above no longer seemed empty. Reports flooded in from farmers, pilots, soldiers, and everyday people. Lights darting in impossible patterns, disks gliding silently over fields, objects accelerating beyond any known aircraft. And then came Roswell. A rancher in New Mexico discovered strange debris scattered across his land, metallic strips that would not bend or burn, beams marked with odd symbols. At first, the local air base announced they had recovered a flying disc, but within hours, the story was replaced by another explanation. It was only a weather balloon. The official narrative shifted, and with that change came decades of suspicion. If it was truly a balloon, why the hasty correction? Why the secrecy? And why did witnesses describe materials unlike anything they had ever seen before? Imagine yourself in that time. The world has just seen the birth of nuclear fire, a weapon capable of erasing cities in moments. Trust in governments is complicated. On one hand, they have protected citizens through war. On the other, they have hidden terrifying truths about what science can unleash. Now the same officials are saying, "Nothing to see here," while farmers and military men whisper that the debris was not from this earth. In such a world, the idea of a secret committee, a group of trusted 12, quietly investigating these events, feels almost inevitable. The United States had already shown a pattern of secrecy. During the war, the Manhattan Project operated in silence, employing thousands of people across multiple states, without most citizens ever knowing what was being built. Only when the bombs fell on Japan did the world understand what had been hidden. That memory was fresh in the 1940s. If a secret project about nuclear weapons could remain concealed, then surely a secret project about unidentified flying objects could too. The idea was believable, even natural. Meanwhile, paranoia grew. The Soviet Union was racing to catch up in nuclear technology, and American leaders feared spies at every level. The newly formed CIA was already running covert operations. The Air Force created Project Sign, and later Project Grudge, to investigate UFO sightings. Files were written, reports compiled, and many of them classified. Citizens sensed that information was being kept from them, and when information is withheld, the imagination fills in the gaps. This is the soil in which the seeds of Operation Majestic 12 could take root. A time of secrecy, of hidden councils, of global tension, and of skies alive with unexplained lights. Whether Majestic 12 was real or invented, it was perfectly suited to its era. It fit like a puzzle piece into a world already shaped by secrecy and distrust. Let us pause for a moment and picture it. The year is 1947 again. A cold wind sweeps across the desert of New Mexico. Stars shine bright against the endless black sky. Somewhere on a military base, a meeting is called. Generals and scientists gather in a dimly lit room. The air is heavy with cigarette smoke, the tick of a wall clock marking each passing second. A folder is slid across the table, stamped top secret. The room is quiet as the folder is opened, revealing photographs of wreckage, diagrams of unfamiliar craft, and reports of beings described in hushed tones as not human. The men exchange glances. Some shake their heads in disbelief. Others lean forward, fascinated. A decision must be made: how to control this information, how to study it, how to ensure the public never panics. Whether or not this scene ever truly happened, it is the image that countless minds have conjured when they hear the name Majestic 12. It is not chaos or fear that we picture. It is secrecy. Calm, calculated, deliberate secrecy. And in that secrecy lies both safety and suspicion. For the people living in the late 1940s, secrecy was part of daily life. Families practiced duck-and-cover drills in schools, uncertain if nuclear sirens would sound. Newspapers carried stories of espionage and hidden communist cells. In this atmosphere, the idea of another layer of secrecy, one focused not on earthly enemies but on cosmic mysteries, felt strangely plausible. So as we rest in the quiet of tonight, drifting deeper into the story, we carry with us the weight of that era, a time when the skies seemed alive, when trust in government was fragile, and when secrecy was not the exception but the rule. It is here, in the shadows of post-war uncertainty, that the legend of Majestic 12 first begins to make sense. And now, as the story continues, we will leave the wider shadows of history and move closer to the heart of the mystery itself, the moment when the name Majestic 12 first appeared, not in the 1940s, but decades later, through documents that would ignite one of the most enduring debates in UFO history. The story of Majestic 12 truly begins, not in the 1940s, but in the 1980s, more than 3 decades after Roswell and the post-war shadows of secrecy. For years, whispers had circulated about hidden committees, about cover-ups, about the possibility that government officials knew more than they were willing to admit. But whispers are only whispers until suddenly they find themselves written down on paper. In December of 1984, a package arrived quietly in the hands of a UFO researcher named Jaime Shandera. Shandera was a filmmaker by trade, but he was deeply interested in the subject of UFOs, working closely with other investigators, such as William Moore and Stanton Friedman. The package was unmarked, postmarked from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Inside, it contained a roll of 35mm film. At first glance, it seemed unremarkable, a strip of negatives that might have held family photos or vacation snapshots. But when Shandera carefully developed the film, the images revealed something altogether different: pages of a government briefing document, stamped "Top Secret FM Magic Eyes Only." The document was dated 1952, and it was allegedly a briefing prepared for President Dwight D. Eisenhower. Its contents were stunning. It described the crash of an extraterrestrial craft near Roswell, the recovery of alien bodies, and the formation of a secret group, Majestic 12, or MJ-12, tasked with studying and containing the phenomenon. The group, according to the document, consisted of 12 high-ranking individuals, a mix of military leaders, scientists, and intelligence officials, all appointed by President Harry Truman in 1947. Imagine the sensation of holding such a film strip, of watching the images appear slowly in chemical baths, line by line, word by word, until the phrase Majestic 12 stared back at you in stark black and white. For Shandera, this was not only evidence of a secret group, It was the key that tied together decades of speculation, secrecy, and unexplained sightings. It was as if a missing piece of the puzzle had been handed to him, slipped through the cracks of history, waiting quietly for someone to look. But with revelation comes suspicion. From the very beginning, researchers were divided. Stanton Friedman, one of the most respected voices in UFO research, took the documents seriously, devoting years of study to their contents. He believed the documents were authentic, pointing out how the terminology, formatting, and references matched real government practices of the era. Others, however, immediately raised doubts. The documents had no clear chain of custody. No one knew who sent them or how they were obtained. Handwriting analysts and typewriter experts examined them, noting inconsistencies in formatting, spacing, and phrasing. Critics argued that the documents were too perfect, too conveniently aligned with what UFO researchers had long speculated. Still, even skeptics could not dismiss the power of the documents outright. They contained names of real officials, figures like Rear Admiral Roscoe H. Hillenkoetter, the first director of the CIA, and Dr. Vannevar Bush, who had overseen wartime research. These were not fictional characters, but real historical figures. If someone had faked the documents, they had done their homework well. The 1980s were a ripe time for such revelations. America was in the middle of the Cold War, with fears of secrecy and government manipulation lingering in the public mind. The Watergate scandal of the 1970s had eroded trust in leadership. The Pentagon Papers had shown that classified documents could indeed hide uncomfortable truths. People were primed to believe that the government might conceal not only political missteps, but perhaps even something as world-changing as contact with extraterrestrial life. As Chandera, Moore, and Friedman studied the documents, they began to share them with others in the UFO community. The news spread slowly at first, whispered through conferences and newsletters, then faster as media outlets caught wind of the story. Majestic 12 entered the vocabulary of the curious, the suspicious, and the dreamers. It was a phrase that seemed to carry weight, like the name of a secret order in a mystery novel, yet it was anchored in the real names of presidents and generals. Let us pause here and picture the atmosphere of that moment. The year is 1984. Personal computers are just beginning to enter homes. The Cold War still casts a long shadow, and television news carries stories of espionage, nuclear threats, and political scandals. In a quiet study, a researcher leans over photographs of typewritten pages, tracing each word with his finger. Outside, the world moves on with ordinary life, but inside, he is staring at what could be the greatest secret of all time. The hum of a desk lamp fills the silence. The papers rest heavily on the table. He imagines Eisenhower, Truman, generals, and scientists gathered in secret meetings long ago, and he wonders, could this really have been hidden for so long? The arrival of the MJ-12 documents sparked not only fascination, but also waves of skepticism from mainstream historians and journalists. The FBI would later investigate and declare them bogus. But for those within the UFO research community, the documents were transformative. They offered a framework, a narrative that tied together Roswell, secrecy, and decades of unexplained aerial phenomena. For the first time, believers could point to written evidence, even if contested. And so, the mythos of Majestic 12 was born. It was not just a story told around campfires or whispered in diners late at night. It was a name on paper, stamped with official seals, tied to real presidents and real events. Whether authentic or forged, the documents gave Majestic 12 life. They provided something solid to hold on to, something to study, debate, and argue about. And in the quiet hours of the night, when the mind drifts between sleep and wakefulness, they offered something more, the possibility that the world was stranger, deeper, and more mysterious than anyone had dared imagine. The power of myth often lies not in whether it is true or false, but in how it is received. For researchers in the 1980s, the MJ-12 documents were like a spark in dry grass. They ignited conversations, inspired books, and fueled television specials. They entered the bloodstream of culture, and once there, they never left. Even today, decades later, the phrase Majestic 12 continues to appear in documentaries, podcasts, and discussions, its origins forever tied to that package in 1984. And as you rest tonight, drifting deeper into the rhythm of this story, consider the quiet mystery of it all. Someone somewhere sent a roll of film to a researcher. No name, no explanation, just a clue, waiting in the shadows. That clue became a legend, and from that legend, the world of UFO mystery was forever changed. As we move forward, we will leave behind the documents themselves and listen to the voices of those who claim to have seen more than paper, those who whispered of experiences, encounters, and hidden truths. For in the story of Majestic 12, words on a page are only the beginning. The human voices behind them deepen the mystery even further. The documents of Majestic 12 created one kind of mystery, the mystery of paper trails and hidden files. But stories are not only written down, they live in voices, in memories, in the hesitant testimonies of those who say, "I saw something," or "I was told something," or even, "I was there." To understand the mythos of Majestic 12, we must leave behind the typed pages and look instead at the human faces behind the claims. The eyewitnesses who described lights in the sky, the abductees who whispered of strange encounters, and the whistleblowers who hinted at a machinery of secrecy larger than anyone dared imagine. These people gave breath to the story. They carried the legend forward, even when governments denied, even when critics mocked. In the 1980s and 1990s, names like Richard Doty surfaced in the UFO community. Doty was an officer with the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. His role, as later described by researchers, was shadowy and complex. Some claimed he fed deliberate disinformation to UFO researchers, weaving lies into truth so skillfully that no one could separate the two. Others believed he genuinely hinted at realities too sensitive to be spoken of openly. Either way, his involvement showed how fragile eyewitness testimony could be, always caught between belief and manipulation. Imagine a researcher meeting with a man in uniform in a quiet diner. The whistleblower leans in, his voice low, his eyes scanning the room. He says he has seen documents, that he knows of hidden programs. He does not hand over proof, but he speaks with the weight of someone who has touched the edges of secrecy. The researcher listens, torn between excitement and caution. Outside, cars pass by, their headlights briefly lighting the window. Inside, the words secret group and hidden committee hang in the air like smoke. And then there were the abductees, people who claimed not only to have seen objects in the sky, but to have been taken by them. Their accounts varied. Some spoke of medical examinations aboard craft, others of telepathic communication, and a few of warnings about the future of Earth. For many of them, the existence of a group like Majestic 12 was not only believable, but expected. If governments knew of UFOs, if they had recovered craft or bodies, surely a council of powerful men was keeping track of it all. Psychologists studying abductee accounts noted how the experiences carried both trauma and meaning. Some abductees spoke of missing time, of waking in strange places, of recurring dreams that felt more real than imagination. Skeptics explained these stories as sleep paralysis, as the mind's attempt to give shape to moments of vulnerability. But believers argued that so many of the accounts overlapped, the same descriptions of beings, the same sensations of paralysis, the same strange marks left on the body, that they could not be coincidence. In the gentle rhythm of bedtime reflection, we can step back and see these testimonies, not as evidence to be judged, but as windows into human experience. Eyewitnesses and abductees were ordinary people, teachers, truck drivers, nurses, pilots, suddenly confronted with something that defied their understanding. For some, sharing their story was a release. For others, it was a burden, carried quietly for years. And when they spoke of Majestic 12, they were often trying to make sense of their own confusion. If there was a council, hidden away, perhaps it explained why their experiences were met with silence or ridicule. Perhaps it explained why answers never came. Whistleblowers added yet another layer. Over the years, Individuals claiming military or intelligence backgrounds stepped forward with fragments of stories. They spoke of underground bases, of recovered materials, of programs with names that never appeared in official budgets. Some were later discredited, some were never confirmed, but each added fuel to the fire of mystery. Even if only a fraction were telling the truth, the implication was staggering, that behind the curtain of official denial, something extraordinary had been unfolding for decades. One such figure was Sergeant Clifford Stone, who claimed he had been part of recovery teams sent to crash sites of unknown craft. He spoke of cataloging not just one species of beings, but many. His testimony was met with skepticism, yet for those who listened closely, his calm tone and quiet conviction were difficult to dismiss entirely. The power of these voices lies not in absolute proof, but in the atmosphere they create. Each testimony, each whisper, adds another brushstroke to the canvas. One person speaks of lights over a desert, another recalls military trucks moving through the night after a crash, another insists they were warned never to speak again. Together they form a tapestry of secrecy, one that feels both chaotic and strangely coordinated. Psychologists studying mass belief note how humans are drawn to patterns. When faced with scattered stories, some true, some false, we instinctively weave them into a narrative. Majestic 12 became the net that caught these fragments, the story that gave shape to confusion. For abductees, it explained why answers never came. For whistleblowers, it justified their silence until retirement. For researchers, it offered a frame that tied documents, testimonies, and mysteries into one structure. Now, imagine drifting off as you picture one such moment. A pilot, flying at night, sees a formation of glowing objects dart across the horizon. He radios his command, but the transmission is met with silence. Later, in a quiet office, he is told to forget what he saw. He leaves confused, carrying the memory like a stone in his pocket. Years later, he hears the name Majestic 12, and suddenly, the silence makes sense. Someone, somewhere, wanted to keep watch, to keep control. The stone in his pocket feels lighter, not because the truth is revealed, but because the mystery has a name. In the end, eyewitnesses, abductees, and whistleblowers are part of the same story, not definitive proof, not undeniable evidence, but human voices in the dark. They remind us that mysteries are not only found in files but in the fragile threads of memory and experience. As you lie in the quiet of this moment, breathing gently, you can let these voices drift around you like echoes in a canyon. You do not need to decide which are true and which are false. You do not need to untangle manipulation from memory. Instead, you can let the voices form a soft chorus, reminding you that behind every document, there are people who saw, who felt, who wondered. And from here we move onward, to see how these voices did not remain in isolation, but began to ripple outward, carried by books, television shows, and films. Majestic 12 would soon escape the realm of research and step fully into culture, becoming not only a hidden secret, but a myth echoed on screens across the world. Mysteries do not remain hidden forever. Some secrets stay buried in dusty files, but others slip into the current of culture, carried by storytellers, filmmakers, and journalists who shape how we dream. The tale of Majestic 12, born from documents and whispered testimonies, soon found itself amplified, transformed, and woven into the larger tapestry of media. And once the story entered the realm of television and film, it was no longer just a rumor. It became part of the public imagination. The late 1980s and early 1990s were a fertile time for UFO lore. Documentaries played late at night, narrated in calm but eerie voices. Paperbacks lined shelves in airport bookstores, their covers splashed with glowing discs and shadowy figures. Researchers like Stanton Friedman gave lectures to captivated audiences, presenting the Majestic 12 documents as keys to a hidden history. Even skeptics, by arguing against them, helped to keep the name alive. Each conversation, each news article, carried the story a little further, until it was no longer confined to the UFO community, but reached living rooms across America. Television proved to be one of the most powerful amplifiers. In 1993, a new series called The X-Files premiered, telling the story of two FBI agents investigating paranormal cases. Week after week, viewers were drawn into plots involving UFOs, abductions, and secret government programs. Though the show never claimed to depict Majestic 12 directly, the shadowy councils it portrayed carried the unmistakable imprint of the myth. Men in suits, meeting in dimly lit rooms, controlling the flow of truth. These images echoed the whispers of MJ-12. The show's famous tagline, "The truth is out there," became a cultural mantra, spoken not only by fans, but by those who truly believed. Movies, too, embraced the imagery. Close Encounters of the Third Kind had already planted the idea of government officials working secretly with extraterrestrial phenomena. Later, films like Independence Day and Men in Black would take the concept further, showing powerful hidden groups controlling access to alien technology. While these works were fiction, their power lay in suggestion. They blurred the line between myth and reality, making the existence of a group like Majestic 12 feel not only possible, but almost expected. Even news outlets contributed, sometimes with caution, sometimes with sensationalism. Magazine covers posed the question, UFOs, what does the government really know? Television specials hinted at dark files tucked away in the National Archives. For those watching at home, the effect was hypnotic. Whether they believed or not, they were immersed in the possibility. Each headline, each late-night program, invited them to wonder what might be hidden in locked cabinets beneath Washington. DC culture thrives on mystery, and Majestic 12 became one of its most enduring symbols. The number itself, 12, was simple yet powerful, evoking a secret council, a chosen few who carried knowledge denied to the rest. Much like the 12 apostles, the 12 Olympians, or the 12 members of a jury, it suggested authority, selectiveness, and importance. Storytellers recognized this power. They invoked it again and again, sometimes directly, sometimes in subtle echoes. Imagine yourself in the 1990s, lying in bed after watching a new episode of The X-Files. The lights are out, the television still humming faintly in the next room. You close your eyes, but the images linger. Agents chasing shadows, generals withholding documents, mysterious craft hovering in the night sky. You do not need to decide whether Majestic 12 is real. The story alone has left its mark, planting seeds of curiosity that may return in dreams. This was the effect of media. It turned the secret council into a living myth, one that visited people not only in research papers, but in their quiet moments of reflection. For the UFO research community, this cultural explosion was both a blessing and a challenge. On one hand, it drew new attention, new audiences, and new funding. On the other, it blurred the line between serious investigation and entertainment. When Hollywood adopted the imagery of Majestic 12, skeptics could dismiss it all as fantasy, while believers sometimes confused fiction with fact. Yet in the calm of hindsight, we can see that both played a role. The blending of entertainment and reality is what gives myths their power. They are not locked in archives. They live in minds, in conversations, in stories told at the edge of sleep. Cultural historians note that myths often gain strength, not from proof, but from repetition. Each time a story is told, whether in a documentary or a science fiction film, it becomes harder to dismiss. Majestic 12 followed this path. The more it appeared, the more it became part of the landscape of belief. To some, it was a symbol of government deception. To others, it was a comforting explanation for the unexplained, proof that someone was in charge of mysteries too vast for ordinary people to handle. As you lie in the stillness now, listening to this unfolding, notice how gently the story moves. It is not about proving or disproving. It is about watching how an idea grows, how whispers become headlines, how files become episodes on television. Culture is like water, flowing around stones, carrying stories downstream until they become part of the ocean. Majestic 12 became part of that ocean, a current in the collective imagination, shaping how generations thought about UFOs and secrecy. And so, with this reflection, we see how the myth escaped its origins and became something larger. From film to television to books and news, Majestic 12 was no longer just a set of documents. It was an archetype, an image that lived inside culture itself. And once an image enters culture, it rarely fades away. From here, our story will turn back to the officials, to the denials and investigations, to the dance between truth and dismissal. For as the myth grew in culture, governments were forced to respond, to examine, to declare, but never quite to silence the mystery. Secrecy is a language all its own. Sometimes it speaks through silence, sometimes through carefully chosen words, and sometimes through the weight of denial that leaves more questions than answers. When the name Majestic 12 surfaced in the 1980s, it was not long before government agencies were asked for a response, and as so often happens in stories of hidden knowledge, the official answers only deepened the mystery. The FBI was among the first to take a closer look at the Majestic 12 documents. Researchers and curious citizens had mailed the Bureau copies, urging them to confirm or deny their authenticity. In response, the FBI opened a file, today known as the Majestic 12 file, and subjected the documents to examination. Their conclusion, released to the public, was clear and firm. The documents were declared bogus. But what does that word really mean? To some, it settled the matter. To others, it seemed too convenient, too vague, as though the label had been applied quickly to cover a more complex truth. The Air Force, too, dismissed the claims. Officials pointed out inconsistencies in typefaces, signatures, and historical details. They argued that the documents did not match authentic government style. For skeptics, these explanations were more than enough, proof that the papers were clever forgeries. Yet believers saw the opposite. They argued that of course a secret program would not follow ordinary style, and that denial was part of the very mechanism of control. Each dismissal, rather than ending the discussion, seemed to breathe new life into it. Here lies the paradox of secrecy. The more strongly an institution denies, the more room it creates for doubt. A quiet dismissal might be forgotten, but a forceful one invites suspicion. Imagine yourself sitting quietly in a dim room, listening to these denials echo. On the surface, the words are firm and final, but beneath them, you hear the softer sound of uncertainty, the whisper of what if. Over time, journalists pressed further. The New York Times, Washington Post, and other outlets published articles on UFO files, Freedom of Information Act requests, and government transparency. Each article walked a careful line between skepticism and intrigue. They often repeated official denials, but the very act of reporting kept the story alive. Readers were left to decide for themselves were the documents a hoax, or was denial simply the expected move of an institution designed to protect secrets. Meanwhile, the intelligence community's own history of secrecy fueled the fire. Programs like Project Blue Book had already shown the public that UFOs were taken seriously by the military, even if conclusions were carefully worded. The CIA had monitored sightings. The NSA had classified reports. So when Majestic 12 entered the conversation, it did not feel like a lone hoax. It felt like part of a larger pattern, a continuation of something glimpsed, but never fully revealed. The dance between secrecy and disclosure played out again and again. UFO researchers filed requests. Governments released heavily redacted documents. Skeptics pointed out flaws, and believers found patterns in the shadows. It was less a single event than a rhythm, unfolding across decades. Like a pendulum swinging back and forth, denial and suspicion moved in time, never quite finding resolution. Psychologists have noted how secrecy itself can shape belief. When people sense they are being excluded from knowledge, their curiosity sharpens. The less they are told, the more significance they attach to what little they do know. Majestic 12 thrived in this psychological space. The government's firm dismissal might have closed the book, but instead it left it half open, inviting speculation. After all, if there was truly nothing to hide, why did the documents feel so persistent, so difficult to bury? Even within official circles, the story refused to vanish. Declassified memos from later decades show intelligence officers, acknowledging the persistence of UFO beliefs among the public. Some feared that such stories could be exploited by adversaries, spreading confusion or distrust. Others worried that real classified programs, advanced aircraft, secret technologies, might be mistaken for UFO activity, drawing unwanted attention. In this environment, Majestic 12 was more than just a myth. It was a potential tool, a potential distraction, a potential problem. As you drift deeper into this reflection, imagine the scene not in the open halls of Congress, but in quiet offices lined with filing cabinets. A fluorescent light hums overhead, a typewriter clacks softly as an analyst prepares a memo. The words may be routine, but the subject, unidentified flying objects, rumors of secret committees, carries a weight that cannot be ignored. In these moments, secrecy feels less like a choice, and more like a burden, carried forward year after year. And so the dance continued. Believers saw denial as confirmation. Skeptics saw it as the final word. Historians, looking back, saw something else, a pattern that revealed more about the psychology of secrecy than about the documents themselves. In a way, Majestic 12 became a mirror. When the government denied, it reflected suspicion. When the public questioned, it reflected mistrust. And in between, the story found room to grow, like ivy climbing the walls of official silence. To this day, the FBI's file on Majestic 12 is available for anyone to read. The pages sit quietly in digital archives, stamped and labeled, their contents mundane in tone yet magnetic in implication. Skeptics say the file closes the chapter. Believers say it proves the cover-up continues. But whichever side you lean toward, the fact remains: the story endures, not in spite of the denials, but because of them. As you listen now, perhaps you feel the rhythm of that dance, the slow back and forth of claim and denial, suspicion and dismissal. It is not hurried, it is not resolved, it simply continues, steady as a clock, and in that rhythm, there is something strangely calming. For mystery, after all, is not meant to be solved in haste. It is meant to unfold gently, over time, like a dream that lingers even after waking. And so, as we leave this chapter, we carry with us the knowledge that secrecy is not silence. It is a language, a performance, a careful step in a dance that has lasted decades. And as long as Majestic 12 is spoken of, the music of that dance will continue. From here our journey will drift toward broader horizons, toward the alternative theories, the paranormal interpretations, and the wider lens through which humanity views the unknown. For if the officials spoke in denials, others spoke in possibilities, offering visions as mysterious as they are compelling. Stories of secrecy always create room for imagination. When doors remain closed, the mind begins to picture what lies behind them. Majestic 12, wrapped in the folds of denial and rumor, became more than just a tale of officials and documents. For many, it grew into something larger, a canvas upon which alternative theories, paranormal ideas, and even spiritual dimensions could be painted. The most common theory is the simplest, that Majestic 12 was indeed what the documents claimed, a secret group tasked with studying extraterrestrial encounters. In this view, the committee was formed after the crash near Roswell in 1947. According to believers, they examined alien technology, interviewed witnesses, and even encountered biological entities not of this earth. Such accounts often speak of recovered craft, of metallic alloys, unlike anything in human science, and of efforts to reverse engineer propulsion systems. The calm image of suited men around a table now deepens, with files showing sketches of spacecraft and strange beings under examination. But from there, the theories diverge into more complex paths. Some researchers suggest Majestic 12 was not simply about UFOs, but about controlling humanity's understanding of reality itself. In this interpretation, the group managed not just physical evidence, but the narrative of extraterrestrial contact. By shaping what the public believed, or did not believe, they held power over the collective imagination. It was less about ships in the desert, and more about guiding the story of human destiny. Others ventured into paranormal terrain. What if the beings described were not visitors from distant planets, but interdimensional travelers, entities moving between layers of reality? This theory draws upon ancient myths, from fairies to spirits, that describe encounters with luminous beings. To those who favor this idea, Majestic 12 was not hiding space travelers, but gatekeepers of a stranger truth, that our world is not the only one, and that we brush against parallel dimensions more often than we realize. There are even those who propose a psychological dimension. They suggest that Majestic 12, whether real or fabricated, represents a kind of myth born of Cold War anxieties. In this reading, UFOs are not craft, but projections of human fear and hope, symbols of power, mystery, and the unknown. The documents, real or fake, serve to embody these feelings. Believers in this camp often speak not of aliens, but of archetypes. They remind us that throughout history, humanity has always seen strange lights, always told stories of otherworldly visitors, always sought patterns beyond the stars. Majestic 12, in this view, is simply the modern name for an ancient human impulse. Paranormal investigators, too, have added layers. Some suggest that the beings linked to UFOs exhibit behavior closer to poltergeists, or trickster spirits, than to astronauts. They appear suddenly, vanish without trace, and often defy physical laws. Could it be, they ask, that Majestic 12 studied not machines but manifestations, expressions of consciousness itself? In this theory, the committee's greatest secret was not technology, but the realization that reality is stranger than physics alone can explain. These alternative perspectives remind us that mystery has many faces. For every researcher who sees wreckage in laboratories, another sees myth and metaphor. For every believer in extraterrestrial visitors, another speaks of dimensions, spirits, or archetypes. Majestic 12, then, is less a fixed story and more a mirror reflecting different worldviews. As you listen in the stillness now, notice how the story stretches and bends, offering multiple possibilities. You do not need to decide which is true. Instead, allow each theory to drift past you like clouds in a night sky, shapes forming, shifting, dissolving. The calm rhythm of speculation carries no urgency, only wonder. In cultural terms, these theories reveal how humans grapple with the unknown. When faced with mystery, we weave narratives that comfort us, challenge us, or inspire us. Some find comfort in the idea of a secret committee protecting humanity from knowledge too vast to bear. Others find excitement in imagining cosmic neighbors guiding us from afar. Still others prefer to see Majestic 12 as myth, proof of our endless creativity in facing the shadows of the unknown. Historians of belief often point out that myths endure not because they are proven, but because they adapt. Majestic 12 adapted, flowing into multiple streams of interpretation. Each stream carried different travelers, yet all returned to the same source, the hunger to understand. Even in the scientific community, a few brave voices have entertained possibilities. Physicists who study multiverses, psychologists who explore the nature of consciousness, and anthropologists who examine the role of myth, all find threads that connect, however loosely, to the Majestic 12 story. While none can offer definitive proof, their perspectives remind us that the unknown cannot be neatly contained. It spills into science, culture, and imagination alike. Consider how soothing this is, that mystery does not demand resolution. It does not ask us to settle on one theory. It simply invites us to explore. As you rest now, think of Majestic 12 not as a locked box, but as a doorway, one that opens to many rooms, each decorated differently, each holding its own atmosphere. You may step into one room, or simply observe them all from the threshold. Either way, the journey is gentle, unhurried, and filled with wonder. And in this way, the story broadens. It ceases to be only about a group of 12 and becomes something much larger, a meditation on reality itself. Are we alone, Are we part of a multiverse? Are the visitors we imagine truly external, or are they woven into the fabric of human consciousness? These questions float softly, like lanterns released into a night sky, their glow steady but never harsh. As we move forward, the narrative will turn again, not to theories but to culture. For whatever Majestic 12 was or was not, its influence shaped art, belief, and collective imagination. Myths do not end in secrecy, they ripple outward, touching lives and shaping the stories we tell ourselves. And in those ripples, the mystery lives on. Some stories, whether true or not, grow larger than their origins. They begin as whispers, a few pages of paper, a small circle of researchers. Then, over time, they ripple outward, touching lives, shaping imaginations, and becoming part of the cultural fabric. Majestic 12 is one such story. What began as a mysterious packet of documents in the 1980s has become a myth, enduring, evolving, and influencing the way people think about secrecy, power, and the possibility of other worlds. Cultural historians remind us that myths serve a purpose. They are not judged only by whether they are factual, but by how they resonate with human concerns. In this way, Majestic 12 reflects deep questions about trust and authority, curiosity about the universe, and our place within it. During the Cold War, when the documents first appeared, people already lived under the shadow of secrecy. Governments held classified knowledge about nuclear weapons, surveillance, and military technologies. The idea of a hidden committee handling UFOs fit perfectly into this atmosphere. It felt believable, not only because of the content, but because secrecy was already part of daily life. The story's endurance lies in how it appeals to multiple audiences at once. For believers, Majestic 12 provides evidence of contact with the extraordinary, proof that we are not alone. For skeptics, it is a fascinating case study in forgery, rumor, and cultural imagination. For artists, it is raw material, images of hidden councils, shadowy files, and men in suits that can be woven into books, television, and film. And for ordinary listeners, it is simply a story that lingers, one that can be told in quiet moments, sparking wonder without requiring proof. In literature, Majestic 12 became shorthand for the ultimate cover-up. Science fiction novels invoked it directly or indirectly, using its name as a symbol for secret knowledge. Non-fiction authors debated it endlessly, some arguing for authenticity, others for deception. The very act of writing about it, however, ensured its survival. Each book added another layer to the myth, another echo in the cultural chamber. Music and art, too, have drawn upon the imagery. Bands have named songs after MJ12, painters have created canvases of shadowy figures, glowing craft, and sealed envelopes, stamped with the words "Top Secret." The symbolism resonates because it speaks to something universal, the tension between what is known and what is hidden. Majestic 12 became not only a specific case, but a metaphor for all that lies just beyond reach. Even in casual conversation, the phrase carries weight. To say it's like Majestic 12 is to suggest secrecy, hidden power, knowledge just out of sight. Much like phrases such as Area 51 or the Deep State, it has become cultural shorthand. This is how myths endure, not only in books or archives, but in everyday language, shaping the way people frame their understanding of the world. Imagine for a moment someone lying awake in the 1990s after watching an episode of The X-Files. They stare at the ceiling, replaying the shadowy images of government agents, alien craft, and secret committees. Whether they believe or not is almost secondary. What matters is that their imagination has been engaged. They picture doors that remain closed, files that remain locked, and the possibility that the truth, whatever it may be, is out there. This is cultural impact, not measured in documents, but in dreams. Sociologists note that myths like Majestic 12 also provide a sense of structure. In a chaotic world, they offer an explanation, however mysterious. If the skies hold unknown craft, then at least someone, the fabled 12, has seen the evidence. If secrets are being kept, then at least they are kept for a reason. The myth comforts as much as it unsettles, balancing fear with reassurance. In this way, it mirrors older myths, where priests or kings held sacred knowledge on behalf of their people. Across decades, the myth of Majestic 12 has adapted to new eras. In the age of the internet, it found fresh life. Websites and forums became filled with discussions, scanned documents, and heated debates. Videos speculated on connections between MJ12 and new UFO sightings. Each generation reshaped the story, yet the core remained unchanged: a hidden counsel, knowledge withheld, and the possibility of extraordinary truths. And still, the story does not fade. Even in recent years, as governments release UFO reports under new names like UAPs, the shadow of Majestic 12 lingers. Commentators ask whether modern committees echo the old myth, whether new programs are simply the continuation of something older and more secretive. The name remains a touchstone, a reminder of how long humanity has wrestled with the unknown. As you listen now, allow yourself to feel the calm persistence of this myth. It does not rush, it does not demand resolution. It drifts gently through culture, appearing in books, in shows, in conversations, in quiet speculations, shared between friends late at night. The fact that we are speaking of it here, decades after the documents surfaced, is itself proof of its endurance. Myths, after all, are not about certainty, they are about meaning. And Majestic 12, whether real or fabricated, has carried meaning across generations. It has reminded people that there are mysteries larger than themselves. It has encouraged skepticism, imagination, and wonder. And perhaps most importantly, it has offered a calm but haunting invitation to keep looking upward, to keep asking questions, and to never assume the story is finished. So as you drift deeper into rest, think of Majestic 12, not as a file locked away, but as a living echo, an echo that began in secrecy, but spread into culture, touching countless lives along the way. It is a myth that endures, not because it is proven, but because it continues to inspire. And like all enduring myths, it waits quietly in the background, ready to resurface whenever humanity turns its gaze back to the stars. From here, our journey will approach its closing chapters. We will consider modern investigations, recent disclosures, and the way the story continues even now. For Majestic 12 is not only a relic of the past, it is a thread still woven into the fabric of the present. Mysteries do not remain locked in the past. They travel forward, reshaping themselves in new times, under new names. The story of Majestic, the 12th of May, have been born in the Cold War and nurtured in the decades that followed. But its shadow extends into the present day, for even as governments release new reports, even as officials speak openly of unidentified aerial phenomena, the quiet question remains: is this simply the next chapter of an older story? In recent years, the world has witnessed an unusual shift. What was once confined to the fringes, spoken of by UFO researchers, believers, and skeptics, has entered mainstream conversation. In 2017, newspapers like the New York Times revealed the existence of a Pentagon program known as AAT, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. Suddenly, the language of UFOs was no longer hidden in dusty files. It was on front pages, spoken by senators, debated in Congress. Yet for those who had followed the whispers of Majestic 12, this new openness felt strangely familiar. A secret program studying strange aerial encounters? It sounded less like a revelation and more like an echo. Videos released by the Navy, grainy but official, added fuel to the fire. They showed objects moving with speeds and agility beyond known technology, tracked by trained pilots. Commentators described these as UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, the updated term meant to carry less stigma than UFO. But whether one called them UFOs or UAPs, the essence was the same. The skies held mysteries and officials were watching. In the calm of hindsight, one might wonder, was this a continuation of the same kind of study that Majestic 12 was said to oversee? If not under that name, perhaps under another. Researchers note that secrecy often shifts its form rather than disappears. Secretals is ceased in form rather than disappears. A name may change, a program may be renamed, but the rhythm of hidden study persists. Majestic, the 12th of May, never have been formally acknowledged, but the appearance of AAT, UAP task forces, and new congressional hearings suggests that the pattern remains. Files are opened, glimpses are given, but the full picture stays just beyond reach. Even today, when officials deny knowledge of Majestic 12, they rarely do so in tones of finality. Instead, they point to the limits of archives, the gaps in documentation, the possibility of misinformation. Such careful phrasing keeps the door ajar. To the calm listener, this is not silence but an invitation to wonder. If the past is uncertain, then perhaps the present is too. Beyond government halls, the public conversation has flourished. Podcasts, documentaries, and online communities have become modern gathering places where the Majestic 12 story continues to breathe. Some researchers argue that the myth was a forgery, a clever creation to mislead. Others insist it was real, perhaps leaked deliberately as a controlled disclosure. Still others blend the two, suggesting that truth and fabrication have always mingled, making it nearly impossible to separate them. And so the conversation continues, not resolved, but carried forward, like an old melody played in new arrangements. Psychologists studying belief note how such mysteries evolve with time. They suggest that the persistence of Majestic 12, even when labeled a hoax, reflects a deeper human need for stories of hidden power. In times of uncertainty, myths of secret councils provide a sense of order. Whether or not they exist, they serve as symbols of control, of knowledge withheld, of mysteries managed by unseen hands. The continued fascination with MJ12 shows that the myth still fulfills this role, even in the 21st century. Imagine, if you will, a late-night congressional hearing in modern times. The chamber is lit softly, microphones hum faintly, and senators ask careful questions about unidentified aerial phenomena. Officials respond in measured tones, their words both informative and cautious. To the casual viewer, this is new territory, serious men and women speaking of UFOs without irony. But to those who remember the old whispers of Majestic 12, the scene feels like an old pattern repeating under brighter lights. The names are different, the language updated, but the rhythm is the same. Questions asked, answers half given, mystery preserved. Technology, too, has transformed the conversation. Where once researchers relied on photocopied documents and grainy photos, today the internet offers instant access to archives, leaked files, and global discussion. Artificial intelligence and advanced imaging allow closer analysis of evidence. Yet paradoxically, the more tools we have, the deeper the mystery seems. For each answer found, new questions arise. Majestic 12, once a story told in small circles, now circulates globally, whispered across forums, retold in countless videos, debated in digital spaces that never sleep. And through it all, the myth continues to adapt. Some now speculate that MJ12, if it ever existed, was not only about UFOs but about emerging technologies, surveillance, or psychological experiments. Others imagine it as a symbol for hidden networks that guide humanity's path. The theories may differ, but the effect is the same. Majestic 12 remains a living symbol of secrecy and mystery, one that refuses to fade. As you listen now, let the calm weight of this persistence settle in. The story is not frantic, not urgent. It is steady, like a clock that continues to tick, decade after decade. Majestic, the 12th of May, never be proven, but it endures, flowing quietly into modern investigations, reflected in new reports, and whispered in continuing shadows. In this sense, the myth is both past and present. It began with documents in the 1980s, but it lives on in congressional hearings, in leaked videos, in late-night conversations on glowing screens. And as long as humanity looks to the skies with questions, the shadow of Majestic 12 will remain close by, reminding us that secrecy is not easily dispelled. From here, our story moves gently toward its conclusion. We will reflect on what this long journey reveals, not only about UFOs and governments, but about ourselves, our dreams, and our relationship with mystery. For in the end, Majestic 12 is more than a file. It is a mirror, reflecting our endless curiosity about what lies just beyond the known.